Some men go through life only accomplishing one major goal. However, my guest today has accomplished many goals. One, a sergeant in the Marine, a naval captain, and an honorary doctor of divinity. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome my new unsung hero, Thomas H.Mcphatter. Welcome to PACE.
Thank you very much.
You have led a very beautiful life, a life with many tensions, but a life with many, many satisfactions. Where were you born?
I was born in Lumberton, North Carolina, October 8th, 1921.
Mm-hmm. And you were one of how many children?
I was one of 11.
One.
10 girls and one boy.
Mm-hmm. So you,
and I was the 11th one.
You were the 11th. And what type of schooling did you have initially?
Well, I was educated early from kindergarten through high. Redstone Academy, a parochial Presbyterian school. Mm-hmm. And I left there and went to Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I received my BA and MD degree. I left there, and I've had some further study in USIU and UCSD in pursuit of a further degree.
Now, you interrupted your college to enlist in the military?
Yes, I did. I had completed 2.5 years of college, but because the ERC came up and took all my contemporaries off the campus at one time and left me there as one of the few males.
I see.
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a minister at that time or not. I felt I ought to go and join the service.
I see.
Because I did not want to be classified as a draft dodger.
While you were in college, did you participate in any sports?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I participated in football and was captain of the boxing team.
So you're pretty well fit in college, in your competition.
Oh, yes, I think so.
So now Pearl Harbor comes, right? And
yes.
You decided to stop your college education and do what?
I decided that I was going to go into the military, whether it was the Merchant Marines or the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps was just then admitting Americans of African descent. So I thought maybe I would try the merchant seaman. I was too young. And I went to the Marine Corps, and they said, you are classified as 4D. The only way we can take you is that you are reclassified as 1A. And I went back to Newport News, Virginia, where I had registered and went before the draft board and requested that they reclassify me from 4D to 1A so that I could come into the military.
Yeah, so to understand something, 4D is divinity?
4D was pre-theological or divinity.
Right. And therefore you had to have that changed, that classification changed and now to go into the military.
Yes, I did.
And so now you went into the Marine Corps. That was your choice.
Well, I went to the Belgian building in Norfolk, in Richmond, Virginia, where I was examined, and I chose to go into the Marine Corps. Any
reason why the Marine Corps as compared to, let's say, the Air Corps or the Army?
Well, I chose the Marine Corps. I'd been around soldiers all my life. Fort Bragg is just 32 miles from my home.
I see.
And I didn't like the big bottom pants with belts in the front for sailors.
Well, the Marine has a very classy uniform, don't they?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So now what happened to you when you went to the Marine Corps?
Well, I went down to Jacksonville. Wasn't that easy going on the train. I saw all these privates and PFCs. They walked by me like I was nothing, like they owned the train. We got into New Bern, and when we got into New Bern, had to go on to a bus to go to Jacksonville. When I went to Jacksonville, a truck came up, and there was a Marine on that truck. Anybody going out to the point? Anybody going out to the point? I had my orders in my hand. So I went out as if I were going to sit up in the cab or some closed vehicle. He put me on the back of this 6x6 in January. And he said, any questions you have from now on, you will say yes, sir, and no, sir. To anyone that has on a military uniform.
So now you arrive at camp, and my understanding, that camp was not the camp that generally for the white enlisted men. Is that correct? This is a separate camp for black Americans.
The white enlisted recruits went to Paris Island or San Diego. Because of Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune insisting that the president adhere to his fair employment practices in the military, they did not stop until they had him make opening for blacks in the Navy and in the Marine Corps. So they established this little camp down on Camp Lejeune, just outside of Jacksonville.
I would consider that segregation.
Yes, it was segregation.
And that was only all black Americans.
It was all black, yes.
Now, didn't that become known as the Black West Point at one time?
Well, we called it the Black West Point. We had white DIs, drill instructors. And as they could train blacks to be drill instructors, the blacks took over the camp, with the exception of the commanding officer and all white officers. And because of our pride in our accomplishments as new Marines and the beautiful uniform and the beautiful black bodies that were adorning those uniforms and the discipline, we call ourselves the Black West Point.
Wonderful. Now, what was your assignment as you further your career at the Marine Corps?
Well, when I first went in, I was a recruit. When I came out, I went out to, I was sent to a chaplain's office. And I went to the chaplain's office, and there was another man there whose wife was expecting a child, and he wanted the same job I did. I told Chaplain Valbeda, let me go out with the recruits I came through boot camp with. I went out and I joined the 8th Marine Ammunition Company. 8th Ammunition Company, they found out I had some education. They sent me to Ammo Tech School. And I learned all I could. I came out of there and I was made a squad leader. And leading a squad, we started making landings. The platoon leader said, well, we need some men to go take swimming to come back and teach the company combat swimming. Well, I was a junior lifesaver. I went and I was trained combat swimming. Came back and they made me then the section leader.
Now, where did you go from there after you completed your training in demolition? My understanding now is that you're going into a combat area.
Yes, first we went to Camp Catalin, and from Camp Catalin, because of the uneasiness of the troops, they were rioting, and the colonel came over and says, look like you young Marines want to fight. I'm going to see that you get some chance to fight. So he sent us out aboard LSTs, and we were on our way. We didn't know where.
How long were you on the LST?
It seemed as though it was 3 months. It was about 2 months, month and a half.
Now, were you heading directly for any particular island?
We were headed for Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima, a name in history today. What happened there?
Well, it was supposed to have been a cleanup operation of no longer than a week, maybe 3 days, and then we were going on to Okinawa. See, we were going right to the front door of Japan. And when we got to Okinawa, we could see battleships and cruisers sitting back firing and big smoke rings coming and planes flying overhead and So we started going around and around the island until they told us when it was time to land. However, the first assault waves that went into Iwo Jima, the first 3 waves were allowed in without any kind of opposition. And once they were in, the Japanese started coming out from pillboxes and everywhere.
They were ready to greet you.
Well, not only greet, they were blowing up the boats.
Yes.
The men wanted to get off.
And when did you finally arrive? When did they send you
The
in?
next day. We
next
all
day.
went in the next day. And we went off this LST. And I went off with my platoon leader, John D'Angelo. And we went up to, crawled up to foot of Mount Suribachi. And there at Mount Suribachi was my job to get a few men and establish an ammunition store, STORE, which was a primary place for ammunition until we built a dump. And they were bringing ammo off the conveyor, dragging it up under fire, crawling over bodies, men screaming, guns going off. All you could smell was gunpowder and guts.
Well, that was a wonderful occasion, I'm sure.
Wonderful.
Now, my understanding that Iwo Jima took 47 days of combat there in order to neutralize the enemy?
Yes.
And did you exist through all those 47 days?
Yes, I did. My 5th or 6th day there, I was in a dump that was being mortared by the Japanese. And when it started burning, Lieutenant Angelo told me to get a detail and go in and put it out. Now, it wasn't that easy because all of your TNT and high explosives were in one place, and you had 30 caliber and 40 caliber in between those high explosives to keep it all from being detonated. Well, when we had Bangalore torpedoes, which was a long tube of TNT, and it was burning just like gasoline.
You were sitting on a potential
major
right. Now, when that combat period was over, did you sustain any casualties in your platoon or in your company?
Oh, yes. When we had to run down to the beach hollering and screaming, oak tree, pine tree, any kind of American tree. That was a password for the night.
I see.
When we got down to the beach, the Navy, they thought an invasion had come up from some of the holes on the island. And we couldn't call a muster because that would call in more ammunition. So you have to try and find your men one by one. When we got enough, Lieutenant D'Angelo came to me and said, let's go up and see what happened. The all clear was over. And we went up and we found about 5 men in place, not in hold, because Iwo Jima shook so much you couldn't dig a hole. And it was shaking as a volcanic island. And if you got under 2 feet, it would start smoking. So
you concluded that operation there, and what did they take you from that point on?
Well, we left there after we stopped a Banzai attack of the Japanese. We were the last to leave. We went to Hilo, Hawaii, R&R.
Now, what I would like to do, I'd like to get you out of that Marine out, and when you finish your tour with the Marine, I would like to find out when you decided after a couple of years to go back into the service.
Yes.
Could you tell me what happened at that point? I want to establish your presence in the Navy.
Okay. Went back to Camp Montford Point, 30 days leave, came out, and went back to school. Went back to school, completed my education at Johnson C. Smith. And my first assignment was St. Paul Presbyterian Church, Kansas City, Missouri. There I was very much involved in the community life, president of the vice president of the Council of Churches, moderator of Kansas City Presbytery.
But what decided you to get back into the service?
Well, I had finished what I went to Kansas City to do, which was to build a church, buy a home church for a home, a church home for the members of the church. Got a church home, $250,000, liquidated the mortgage, got into the reserves, going on reserve duty every year from 1953 until 59. And I said, it's time for me to leave. I finished what I started.
So, but were you recalled at that particular time?
I wasn't called, I volunteered.
You volunteered, okay. So now that brings you into the Navy.
Yes.
And you went in as a lieutenant commander?
No, I came in as a lieutenant.
Lieutenant, okay.
Yes.
And now give me a little of that experience.
Well, in about 2 years or more, 3 years, I was a lieutenant commander. It was a challenge because there were only 3 chaplains of African descent in the United States Navy at the time. David Parham, chaplain, Chambliss, and myself. My first tour of duty, when I left the States on Okinawa, I went in for dinner after I had come in off the plane at Kadena. And at the door of the officers' club where we ate dinner, a man reached up and grabbed me in my collar at the door and said, "Who are you?" I said, "You don't put your hand on me to know who I am." That went on for 2 or 3 times, and he went on to say, I told him that I was a chaplain. He said, "Well, I am Major so-and-so, United States Marine Corps." I said to him, "I was probably a Marine before you were." "Oh, you one of those colored boys my daddy sent up from Texas to that camp down there." I said, "No, get your hands off." He didn't move his hands, and I decked him off into the pool with the goldfish. Went in and had my dinner, came out and went to see the senior chaplain and told him what had happened. Wonderful tour there.
Yeah, that was one.
This kind of thing continued.
Right. I realize that. I just want to get you to the point where you became a captain, and how difficult was that?
A captain?
Yes.
I stayed on active duty 9 years.
Yes.
And I was forced out of the Navy to inactive duty because I had unsatisfactory fitness reports. I had been labeled a troublemaker.
And that troublemaker existed because of what?
That troublemaker existed because I was fighting racism, prejudice, and unjust treatment for everybody.
And my understanding is the fact that at one point in time, it really went way over your head to the experiences, and you took some time off. You got ill a little bit emotionally for all the things that were coming into your life. Do you recall that particular period? That you went into the hospital?
No, I don't. Not until it was about time for me to come out.
Right.
But I do recall trying several times to get aboard for the correction of naval records and was denied it. I was off active duty for 11 years and never got any higher than lieutenant commander. It wasn't until there were riots in Vietnam where I had been and had appealed to the Secretary of Defense, Clark Clifford, to have them get those Confederate flags out. And when they finally did, the racism was quieted down. However, Admiral Zumwalt had become the Chief of Naval Operations, and I wrote him about it. I was put in uniform quite often right here in San Diego to go aboard the Kitty Hawk and the Constellation to quail race rides. I was sent out to Ream Field, put on my uniform to go out and quail race ride. The very thing that I had told them was going to happen. What caused me to be named a troublemaker.
Did you have any trouble with your contemporaries from the divinity, some of your chaplain associates?
No, we started while I was in there as a result of me working for NAVALX, a black chaplain's workshop. And I was responsible for a lot of them coming in because I took the laws regarding equal representation back into the chaplain's workshop. John J. O'Connor, who became an admiral, not an admiral, became he was a chief of chaplains. He became a cardinal.
Wow, really?
Cardinal of New York. He called me back. H.Mcphatter, you haven't been treated right. And so I got aboard and I went to Great Lakes, and I went from Great Lakes down to Memphis. And when I got down to Memphis, Tennessee, it started all over again because I was a marked man. But I had a Martin Luther King service down there where they had been having it in a small chapel. I had it in the Blue Theater. I had only over 800 or 900 people there, packed. Now that happened through me communicating with the television stations, the radio stations, the country churches. But
when did you actually leave the Navy?
I left the Navy in 1986, 83. 80, that's when I retired.
Now, was there a question of timing there for a full pension in the Navy? Did they give you a full pension for the time that you spent, or did they shortchange you?
Oh, when I got aboard?
Yes.
All of the fitness reports were liquidated.
I see.
My record clear, as if I'd never had a problem. I got pension. I did not get promoted because I'd been promoted to commander as a result of these assignments. But I had to go before a promotion board, which caused part of my problem down in Memphis because they didn't know I was in the zone.
I see. Well,
When I got the adjustment for commander, they made my data rank retroactive so many years.
From past service.
Yes.
Yes. So then now you retire from the Navy, and what did you do after that?
Well, when I retired from the Navy, I went back to NAVALX, Naval Electronic Systems Engineering Center, as the Deputy Equal Employment Opportunity Officer. I continued to pursue my goal for equal employment, just treatment, retention of men in the military, and their treatment. While I was in the Navy, as a chaplain, the black chaplains dubbed me as the Black Moses in the military.
Well, I know that you had many incidents where you didn't take any steps backwards, and that I believe that you opened up many doors in what you accomplished in the Navy to start off with. And you seem to follow through the same thing as you went into civilian life.
Yes.
Did you have any major experiences in the civilian life shortly after you came out of the Navy?
Well, when I first came to San Diego, they burned a cross in my front yard in Emerald Hills.
Okay, I see. Now, so you had difficulty getting quarters in that area?
Yes, I did get quarters at all. And I had only a brief time to get out of town and go to 100 Harrison Street in San Francisco. Well, I'm going out to protect somebody else and my family being left here.
And what did you think your major accomplishment in civilian life after you left the military?
My major accomplishment, I guess, was for labor already completed. I received a Doctor of Divinity degree from ITC, Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia. There were many things along the way. I had received, that one was one that I didn't, well, I had labored for it, the recognition. Another thing which I speak often of was at the 50th anniversary of Iwo Jima.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. I had never been recognized before. And so when we left the cathedral, I went out away from the Secretary of the Navy, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Secretary Dalton, and got me a tree and started praying. The reporters came to me. They wanted to know was I part of the group. I said, yes. Well, why have you withdrawn? I said, I've got to thank God for what has happened here today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I went back to my hotel, my wife and I. The next day, the newspapers were at the door. We picked the newspaper up, and there was my picture on the front page of the most conservative paper in this country.
Now, this was a convention of previous men who fought in Iwo Jima?
No, it was a convention of all Marines.
All Marines. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you call it a reunion. It was a 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm. Now, I participated in that. I gave the invocation at the 50th anniversary of VJ Day. VJ Day,
right. You know, we have just a limited amount of time. I do want to express my thanks to you for appearing on this program with me. The only comment that I can possibly say is that you were the Reverend King of the Navy. You set an example. You opened up many, many doors.
Yes.
You never backed off. You stood toe and toe with all the administration and people who certainly were not very kind. Yes. But you did make a fantastic contribution. You're a credit to the Black Americans. You're a credit to yourself. And it's been an honor and a pleasure for me to have this conversation with you as well.